Good morning. My name is Dr. Phil McRae. I'm from Canada, and it's my pleasure to welcome you to one of our closing sessions where we're looking at solutions to these wicked problems we've been dealing with over the last 2 days and discussing, looking at the science, looking at potential societal solutions, looking at solutions cross-culturally or interculturally around how we can manage the broader issues around technology, addiction, health, learning in many cases. We're very fortunate to have a group of talented experts, both scientists, practitioners, and people working in civil society, to look at what the science tells us, and then so what does it mean for young people? Most importantly, children and youth, who are our future for all of us, the treasure of moving one generation into the next. We want to know what we do next. We had the what conversations, we had the so what are the implications. Now what are we going to do? Now what will be our solutions, either together or in our different parts of the world? What we'll do in this presentation is go through a set of solutions put forward by our experts. And then at the end, we'll talk a little bit about how they come together, maybe what the golden thread is between all of the different presentations. It's my distinct pleasure to introduce first Michele, the Director of Societal and Environmental Sustainability at UEFA, the European Union's Football Association. So welcome.
Thank you.
And it's a pleasure. We had a conversation earlier, and as a Canadian, where hockey is our primary sport, we're trying to turn all Canadians into football players. By next year, when is it, 2020?
Soccer players.
Soccer players, football players. But I was really impressed. The organization works with over 24 million youth under the age of 18. So the impact that you have on health and development is an enormous impact for society. So I do hope to bring that to Canada at some point. So what I'd like to do is ask you, in terms of solutions, what you think we can do with the relationship between sport and mental health and providing children opportunities to play and connect IRL, in real life.
Yes. I need microphone or not? I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah.
I need microphone?
Yeah.
Yeah? So I don't know for the...
Just in case.
Just in case for the recording.
They use it.
I need it. It's working. First of all, good morning, distinguished panelists and distinguished guests. I'm the Director of Social and Environmental Sustainability at UEFA division, and I'm happy father of 11 years old, nice child. I'm honored to be here today, of course, to represent the UEFA, that is the largest sports organization in the world, and also to share with you a different perspective, because looking at the panelists are very scientific, and I will love to hear from you what is the scientific evidence on this, and we want to try to put the solution, to increase the solution, to put on the field the solution, what UEFA and what football can do with you and with Human Change. Of course, the first, I thanks Human Change to organize this panel. I welcome also my colleague from UEFA Foundation, Bruce, and particularly Margarita for inviting us today to open this panel, and also for their passion and engagement in protecting our children against the dehumanization and, of course, the negative impact of the overuse of technology. The discussion today is great important and urgency too. The statistics are alarming, as we saw on the walls around this launch, that the figures are very, very, very dramatic. We need to do something. We want to be part of the solution, of course. We are not the solution. Football is not the solution, but is, as I mentioned before, we are the largest platform in the world. You can use our platform to raise and to send positive message and strong message around the world, because we have 24 million under 18 registered players, but we have 40 million children that play everyday football. but we touch also 4 billion fans during our 19 tournaments. And the next tournament will be Germany 2024 Euro that will be played in June. Let me go around. In a world where our children lives are increasingly interconnected through technology, the role of football in maintaining human connection is enormous. But alongside football, the key role in protecting children must be played by families and schools. That's where our kids and young adults spend 95% of their time. They are the key drivers. We represent the base of pyramid of education, respect, living together in the community. Sport can, indeed must, play an important role, but it cannot be the only solution. We need to act together. This is a collaborative effort where everyone should be everything in the power to encourage children and parents to adopt healthy lifestyle. And quickly what UEFA is doing now. We are engaging in physical activities, not the only best solution to promote children's physical, mental, and emotional well-being, but it's also a way to learn important values such as teamwork, camaraderie, discipline, and respect of rules. This is the role of football. This is the role of sports, I think. Through sports, children learn how to communicate, how to cooperate, how to respect each other, how to live together. This is also an important part. Football is the most popular sport in the world and have an important role to play in protecting and influencing our children. In football, the children enjoy the victory, can sometimes give way to the sadness of the defeat, but the children learn resilience, and this is part of important of their life. But football role is not limited to the field. Off the field, it's a powerful solution to fight against loneliness and social isolation generated by overuse and misuse of digital devices. This is our goal, to play this match. For us, it's a crucial match to play together. At UEFA, we feel our responsibility. We know that football has a unique ability to unite, inspire, and activate people, especially children. Our work is driven by our strategy. It's a football sustainability strategy 2030 that we launch in December 2025. This strategy is composed of 11 policies, 2 of which being child and youth protection and health and well-being. They are super interconnected with each other, and we are working to interconnect the clear targets and KPIs that we have in our strategy. Football association, we are working with 55 football associations in Europe. We are working with more than 500 clubs, but also we have on our side, we have our stakeholders, players, former football players, coaches that are a big voice and can influence and can be part of our life. Through our long-standing partnership with the different special organizations such as Human Change, we want to play our part once again. As part of our efforts, we advance healthier lifestyles and foster living. We identify 4 main themes at the beginning: physical activity, mental health, nutrition, and substance abuse. But after a nice conversation with our Norman De Meyer, that was former president of Malta FA, and Margarita Dreyfus, we decided to add the 5th chapter in our tool. We are trying to set guidelines for all the national association, 55 national association, all the clubs, to drive them in this topic, to jump in these topics, and to support and to spread the message from the bottom of the pyramid to the base of the pyramid that is composed, as I mentioned before, from millions of fans and millions of football active players. In our hope that our collaborative efforts with our friends of Human Change, we can lead concrete actions. We must act to improve lives of our children. This panel discussion will be very important for us also to change a different experience, different idea, and let leverage the power of sport and football as part of the solution to shield our children from the humanizing effects of excessive use of technology. We are ready it's not too late. Thank you.
Wow. Michele, first of all, on behalf of all of us here in the Human Change Coalition, I want to first thank you for your leadership in creating a cohesive set of solutions, but also for your commitment to young people, to helping them not only be healthy and learn to live together and learn to be together, but learn how to move forward in their lives and be successful humans. And without your leadership and the organization that you have, I think it just shows how important it is for us to be together. So on behalf of the Human Change Project, please thank you. We're very lucky because when you look at an organization that has such broad reach with a sport, with something that connects families, makes dreams, come alive for young people, that has to be backed at the level of the family. It has to be backed by the parents and the children. They're the ones that drive, the children to soccer or support them in their passions. So I'd like to welcome up Dr. Jim Winston, clinician with 30 years of experience treating addiction, trustee of the Winston Family Foundation, and his son, Hunter. And if you could join me in welcoming them. And I've had a chance to get to know Hunter and Jim over the last week, and it's been my distinct pleasure. And I have really appreciated hearing, Jim, about your journey, in particular, how you and Hunter kind of are navigating the addictive pull of smartphones and how you're continually negotiating some of those challenges. So what I'd like to do, if you don't mind, is have you share how your particular family decided to delay smartphone use in your world, and maybe some of the reasons why.
So I want to make 2 points today in the time period we have. So I'm an addiction guy. I've known for a number of years that in my clinical opinion, smartphones are addictive. I've watched. So I made a conscious decision probably 8 years ago that after studying a lot of the neurobiology that I was going to wait until 14 to give my kids. I have a younger son who's 13 now. And one part of what I want to share with parents out there is that it was really difficult. From the 5th grade on, they were the only ones in their grade of 125 kids who did not have a phone. I heard, not every day, but I heard constantly, they're left out. They don't want to go on field trips. They feel they're not connected. And it was heartbreaking. He would never believe it, but it was really heartbreaking for me to hold the line. There are a lot of things that I say no on that I know inside, if they push me, I'm going to collapse and just give in because the fight isn't worth it. But I knew neurobiologically that if my responsibility as a parent is to their future self, that this was the best kind of line I could draw on the sand. And it's tough with my younger son and he makes the point of he got his phone at 14 and a half and he's going to count the days to make sure that my younger son has to get it at 14 and a half. The second piece I just want to talk about is the community perspective is my kids got invited to iPad parties and they didn't go because they didn't have one. That there needs to be some sort of community shift where there's a group of like-minded parents who believe in waiting until there's an organization in Texas called Wait Till 8. And they are really trying to shift the narrative. But it was a very difficult thing because I have a photo in the kind of dog and pony show I do that shows my younger son when he was in 4th or 5th grade at a party with 10 other boys. And he was the only one looking at the camera because he was the only one who didn't have a phone. Every other kid was glued to their phones. And the mother, a wonderful woman, sent me a text that said, the boys are having a great time. And that was pretty horrifying that was considered a great time. So somehow we need to shift the cultural norms around, especially for younger kids, that it's not cool to have a phone before you're 14. Because right now, the tsunami of it is you are excluded if you don't. So,
Hunter, what about your perspective? What did you, when you take a look at your experience, what was your response now that you look back on it? How do you feel?
Yeah. So from the beginning, it was really hard not having a phone. I always felt left out of pretty much conversations anywhere outside of class because everyone in my school used Snapchat and texting, and I didn't really have that. So it was really hard that way. Like he said, there was a field trip where I didn't want to go. It was to the Everglades because I would be the only kid on the bus without a phone. And he ended up making me go on that field trip. But on that field trip in the bus, it was just me in the aisle sitting there just by myself while everyone else was playing on their phone and playing games like that together. And I was left out then. And now looking back on it, not getting a phone, I'm kind of thankful for it because I was able to do deep dives and really understand stocks and photography and really get into those things. For example, stocks, I would spend 20 hours a week, something around that, reading Motley Fool and Barron's. Those are, yeah.
Sorry, I just need to get your phone number just so I can do a little stock trade.
Yeah, and with photography, also at 11, I got a camera and just really was obsessed with it, just enjoyed taking photos. And I just wanted to become better and better at it every time I took a photo, and learning all these different ways through controlling the aperture and focal length of the lens and all these different things, how to just get better and better. And I spent also a ton of my time, free time, that I wouldn't have if I was distracted by social media or a phone, to learn about photography and get better.
I need to jump in and say he bought probably $4,000 worth of lenses from the money he made in stock. So,
Well, a couple of things. First of all, as a teacher, it kind of breaks my heart when you talk about being on the bus and being alone, because that's, you talk to him about social norms. If being alone together is the social norm, that's really heartbreaking. And so I feel for you in that. And I know we talked about your photography and some of the photographs you've taken in Davos and your experience, but I think that's going to take you much further in life than having played that game on that bus on that day. So it's been really a pleasure, getting to hang out with you and get to know you here, Hunter. Jim, in terms of moving forward with families, how do we help scale this up? I mean, your one experience, it was a challenge, but as a clinician and as a psychologist, what would be your recommendations to try and scale this or broadly move?
So in the 15 seconds I have left, I think most parents are incredibly well-intentioned, the ones that I talk to, and then I go into the brain development and how my clinical experience says that these devices, given the attachment profile, are rewiring our kids' brains. So I think if that can be disseminated at scale, I think it's going to impact a lot of parents in terms of their growing an internal resolve to resist the social pressure, because I believe that if we push this hard enough, there'll be a critical mass. And at one point, there will be a shift to, at one point cigarettes were cool, now they're not. Same kind of paradigmatic shift can take place because we're building the science to really sort of demonstrate that these devices are rewiring our kids' brains. And so that, I think, is very impactful for most parents.
On behalf of the Human Change Coalition, could you all please join me in thanking you? So thank you, Dr. Winston. One of the things you talked about in your solutions was the idea of cultural norms. And we know that smoking, at least not just in North America, but globally, it has become an issue of, in Canada, for example, if you pull out a cigarette anywhere within 20 meters of a building, you will have somebody come up to you and say, could you please move away? It is not okay anymore to smoke in public places. So one of the things that I wanted to kind of explore further is around some of the regulatory actions that can be taken. So I would like to invite up Dr. Gaia Bernstein, who is the co-director of the Gibbons Institute of Law, Science and Technology at Seton Hall University School of Law, who is a brilliant philosopher of law and litigator, and talk a little bit about regulatory action, some of the global trends in policy making, and really what you see as a solution to the most promising pathways, because we can challenge ourselves at the level of the family. We can have incredible supporters with, those who run huge organizations, the football organization in Europe, but we also need the support of that legal framework. So if you don't mind giving us what you think would be your solutions.
Okay, so we've talked for the last couple of days about the fact that there are digital technologies all around us, and it's everywhere. It's in social media, it's in games, it's in our devices, and they're all based on deep human vulnerabilities. And I will give an example before I get into the legal solutions. For example, our stopping cues are taken away from us. So we have the infinite scroll. We go on Twitter, on Facebook, there's never an end to a page. We go on TikTok, or we go on YouTube. One video follows another. And there are many other mechanisms. This is just one of them. So the idea of regulation is not to go back to the 20th century. We're not going to go back to a screenless, unconnected world. So, but the idea is to come up with better technology. And so why do we need to have laws? Because we have been waiting for quite a while. For over a decade, the technology industry has done nothing to change things. And they wouldn't, because their entire business model is based on collecting our data. And in order to do that, they need us online for as long as possible. And then they want to sell us advertising. Again, they need us online for as long as possible, so we'll see the advertising. They have no incentive to make a change. Now, I would say there are two regulatory ways to change things. And one is by directly regulating these addictive features, and the other is through attacking this indirectly by exerting pressure on the business model. I think in both ways, the real goal is to redesign the technologies, not have no technology, but to have technologies which are not addictive. Now, I don't want to stand here and give you a laundry list of laws, because I think you'll all leave. So I will just give some examples of what I'm talking about. Talking about regulatory options to directly affect addictive features. So there are some laws, we are seeing them, and I would say this has been a very important year. We are seeing lots of laws and bills around the world. We don't know enough how they work out, but we're seeing them happen. So there are some laws which just prohibit addictive features. Some prohibit them explicitly. Let's have no more infinite scrolls. Some prohibit features which maximize user engagement. So we have these kinds of laws. And the problem with them is that we still have the business model that means that tech companies will keep coming up with new ones. So we can prohibit specific ones, but they will have new ones. And also we don't really know what's going on because there's no transparency. So it's very easy for us not to realize for years that we were actually affected by new designs. Another very popular legal approach is impose the duty of care. And it's really been targeted mostly recently on social media. Have social media assess whether they're doing harm to kids. Have them assess on a regular basis what their algorithms are doing. So that is one solution. Again, there's the issue of transparency, of not really knowing what's going on. And I think that goes to what was said earlier about this being a very complicated issue. It's complicated across the board. It's even complicated when you're talking about regulatory solutions, which is why one of the points I want to make here, it's not going to be one solution, it will be many of them. Now, let's talk about indirect measures to change the business model. One is banning access. Interestingly, countries in Southeast Asia have been on top of this for years. Basically, they've had shutdown systems. Kids could not play after midnight. Kids were restricted for a certain number of hours. We're seeing this now spread across the US. Laws proposing banning kids on social media from a certain age. Another type of solution, which is actually already in the work, is this business model has many flaws. Data, advertising, any law that restricts data collection, any law that restricts advertising for kids, basically imposes pressure on the business model. So my bottom line of all of this, there are many other legal solutions which I propose and I think would help. It won't be one of them that will solve this, but I think the main thing is to make this business model less appealing to tech companies because it's becoming hard to operate it, and they need to start thinking about a business model that does not use our time as a resource.
Well, thank you. First of all, this last 2 days, I've heard more about the infinite school, the real pull that this brings as young people and actually adults as well spend. I think one of the statistics we heard is 1.3 miles of scroll
longer than you walk.
longer than you actually walk in a day. When you think about that, if that's what you're doing, that really is a shocking statistic. 1.3 miles of text scrolling, and you're not even walking that much. So the historical moment that you talked about in terms of changing laws, right? The ability to remove or regulate some of the addictive features, the ability to take a look at algorithms and their bias, right? Whatever that bias is that's built into it, and trying to change those through legal means, I think is really powerful. And when you said this is a moment that things are starting to change, that notion of the Human Change Project being part of that is also really big. And I have 47,000 colleagues back in Canada that I'm responsible for. And when I go back, I'm going to be looking at how we can support this work. So my question for you is, how can the group that's here, both medical, Harvard Medical School, Boston Children's Hospital, our colleagues at foundations, the American Psychological Association, teachers in Canada, how can our research communities and different groups, how can we support your efforts, regulatory efforts?
So first of all, I think the most important, there's lots of medical research out there. I think that's something we're talking about later today, that we need much stronger proclamations from health organizations and from respectable medical associations. The stronger they are, the more comprehensive they are, the easier it is for regulators to go forward. They don't want to go forward unless they're sure that they're relying on solid science, and the tech industry keeps telling them this is not solid science. So that's one thing that's more important. Now, this year I have seen so much advocacy going on that's I think part of the reason we are seeing things changing. But I think it's really important to, as a message to promote here, is that the goal is not against technology. I'm here because I like technology, probably too much. I get up in the morning and I take out my phone, and even though I know I'm not supposed to do that, I check the weather. Half an hour later, I've checked all my messages and all my social networks. So I think our goal here is to create the market situation where we can come up with better technologies, that the business model change, and there's so many tech entrepreneurs who want to come up with other technologies, but there are things which are abstracting them because the business model is the way it is, because you need to build a critical mass of people, for example, if you want to build a new type of social network, otherwise nobody will go there. So once we change the conditions for advocacy, for change of laws, then we might be able to see new technology that instead of erasing humanity actually supports humanity.
On behalf of the group. So you mentioned solid science. I'd like to introduce Dr. Mitch Prinstein, Chief Scientific Officer of the American Psychology Association, and welcome.
Thanks.
I want to share with everybody the work that Mitch did came directly to affect 700,000 children and 47,000 teachers when they released a recommendation, policy recommendation. I was in a strategic planning meeting and I had one of my colleagues bring in a brief around an announcement that the American Psychology Association produced, which you were part of, that really did change our policy and our direction. And it was solid science, and because it came from such a reputable organization, it had a cascade effect. So I want you to know that sometimes in the wilderness of the north, in the middle of a very small part of the world, your work and your science did have an effect. So, from the perspective of national and international bodies, both medical and association bodies like ours, how can recommendations, guidelines, and reports help inform parents, teachers, and policy makers in drug change?
Sure. Thank you so much, and thanks for those kind comments. When it comes to solutions, I do believe that most of the solutions are going to require us to have scientific information on what is the relationship between technology and development. I mean, ultimately, our scientific studies are objective, they're independent, and they're allowing us to come up with irrefutable facts and conclusions about what's happening. It's those conclusions that most of the other solutions are based on. And I am participating in the scientific endeavor in a couple of different ways. One is through, as co-director of the Winston Center at UNC Chapel Hill, along with Dr. Eva Telzer, we are doing many studies to try and understand the role of technology. Our participants are many hundreds of kids, starting from age 8. We have some all the way up to their mid-20s. We follow them for year after year after year. We scan their brains year after year. And we're studying all kinds of things. The extent to which their phones are causing them stress, the extent to which it's interfering with their sleep. We look at the ways in which their brains are changing in their development and growth as a function of how much they are using their devices. We're looking at cyber hate. We're looking at a wide array. We're even looking at the extent to which the brain reacts in dramatic ways to being denied access to your phone for just a day, and seeing that in the scanner. Some of our research has been able to, shed some new light on just how deep these concerns may be when we were able to reveal changes in the development of the social brain and also in our inhibitory systems, our neural systems, as a function of how many times kids are picking up their phone, with many telling us over 400 times a day. I don't inhale 400 times a day. Like, I'm picking up at your phone that often just seems, remarkable.
I hope
Yeah,
you should.
Okay, I'm gonna work on it.
This is what happens when you travel with Harvard doctors. on site clinical support.
So one of the things, though, that happens with scientists is that we do a lot of work to publish our results into journals where other academics can read about those findings and then build upon them. One of the things that's particularly hard, though, is finding ways to get that science out to people who can use those conclusions to enact social change. In my role at the American Psychological Association, that's exactly what I'm tasked to do. And we were really in so many different conversations, particularly within the States, but also with OECD, where we were being asked about the scientific findings and realizing that, much of what was being said in the media or in policy circles was not reflective of what most scientists knew. So it was with that impetus that we were inspired to put together a synthesis, and APA issued its very first health advisory ever on this topic, specifically to synthesize what we know and demonstrate we actually have enough information now to document where there may be harms, potential benefits, and where we need to be doing more work. That work, I'm so happy to hear about its global impact. domestically, it's really been something that has guided the writing of the COSA Act. We were able to work very, very closely with several senators' offices in the United States. We've been working with the Federal Trade Commission. We've had an opportunity to present this to numerous different bodies, but interestingly, it also activates the media in a different way. It creates a new conversation that is going straight to schools. Many teachers kind of wrote to me to say that they were going through our testimony at the U.S. Senate with their classrooms, paragraph by paragraph, to, have discussion. A lot of families who are very interested in getting feedback. But all of this is about, having the ability to do the science and to know that there's a critical, need for that science to be communicated directly to all the stakeholders who can be involved in making change. So that's been our approach to solutions so far.
Well, I think it's been an excellent approach because it's working. When you do speak truth to power, which whether it be in senates or in families, people are looking for that solid foundation. And so having really rigorous science, having you do this work is really important. I was struck by a study out of MIT that was done where they took phones away for a day. And the students reported feeling phantom vibrations in their hands after a day of not having their phones. So, neurophysiologically, psychosocially, having a really good understanding from the science of what the potential harms and benefits. I think this is an important point you make, that it's, and Dr. Bernstein made as well, that it's not just about some of the harms, but it's how do we live with these different technologies and these approaches. So I guess the question I have in terms of moving forward, how do we help translate this in a way that it really is taken seriously for future regulatory acts, policy decision making, or even families saying, this is something really grounded. Is it more research? Is it having it triangulated by 3 different organizations? Is it finding a center of excellence in this area? Is it the Human Change Coalitions? All of the above. What do you suggest?
Well, we live in a world where people have a diversity of opinions about science, and I think that's...
This is true. This is true. My eye is twitching.
So I think that's an important issue, but we also need to confront the idea that science is being threatened right now on this very topic. Graduate students are being poached from graduate school to go work with their scientific expertise at the companies that are actually providing some of these technologies and platforms at salaries that just academia cannot compete with. In the United States, there was a call to action for the information on this topic, and an increase in the NIMH budget of $10 million. NIMH, the National Institute of Mental Health, to study this topic of $10 million. For those that are not familiar, that's enough to fund 3 studies where we need about 1,000 more to do. So it's just a woefully inadequate commitment. And then we don't have access to the data that many tech companies do have and rely on to be able to make decisions about how to actually optimize user engagement while we're trying to study what's happening. So there are some threats to our ability to continue to do this science and to continue to do it in an objective and rigorous way.
On behalf of the Human Change Project, please join me. Finally, it's my distinct pleasure to introduce Dr. Michael Rich and Dr. Stacy Drury from Boston Children's Hospital. If you want to come on up, I'll give you a little bit more of the background. Dr. Rich and I for about 14 years, have been working on trying to help research what it means to grow up digitally in Alberta. We have a project called Growing Up Digital, and it's expanded to Australia and different countries. So Dr. Rich is the founder and director of the Digital Wellness Lab. And Dr. Stacy Drury is the Psychiatrist-in-Chief at Boston Children's Hospital. And I can say, from spending lots of time with them, that if I could have them as my doctors, it would be my greatest luck and gift in life, because you are not only caring and hope-filled, but you're both brilliant in your fields. And so I feel really privileged to share space and spend time with you. From the perspective of practitioners treating patients, What changes need to be seen within the medical community to more appropriately address the rising issues of children and these dangerous relationships with technology?
So I'm going to start because he always has to have the last word, so we're just going to set it up that way. So the first thing is being here. So I'm a child psychiatrist. 10 months ago, changed my entire world to come to Boston Children's because I recognized I was being ineffective where I was. Because the voice of clinicians, unless it's tied and linked to the voices of parents, to the voices of teachers, and to the voices of people in places that can change how other things work, is never going to work. It's not, the problems and challenges of digital media are not solvable by me in a clinic. Doesn't matter how many kids I see. It's not solvable as a child mental health care crisis, where we have 1 in 4 kids thinking about killing themselves every year. We have 1 in 4 kids of non-gender conforming actually trying to kill themselves every year. And where I am terrified that we are going to lose a significant portion of the next generation of children. So that's the next generation of your workforce. That's the next generation of your amazing soccer players. That's the next generation of parents. And so why I said I had to leave. And what I have learned through this week is I also have to push my own academic communities to be louder, to be brought together, and to make this a global message. And so I have given myself a task list because I hate meetings that don't have task lists that you have to do. And so my promise to this group is that I'm going to pull together the American Academy of Pediatrics, the American Academy of Child Adolescent Psychiatry, the International Association of Child and Adolescent Psychiatry, and we're going to put together data-driven and parent and youth-informed guidelines and recommendations. And then I'm going to ask Margarita to get those in front of the World Health Organization. And we've got to do it quickly. Because I lose 12 kids every day in the United States to suicide. And that's too many kids to lose. The other thing is that I have to be in places with voices like Michael's that I wouldn't normally be. And I have to have other voices that are stronger than mine. So my ask to all of you in leadership positions, the organizations that have influencers. And when I talk about influencers, I talk about business leaders. I absolutely talk about leaders in sports. To take those opportunities, to take that halftime and have up on those big jumbotron screens information about the neuroscience of digital media. Have your leaders, your coaches, your players tell young kids that this is going to influence how their brain develops, it's going to influence their health and well-being, and that there are better ways to do that. And so we will create the data and the information with Mitch, and then we will give it to you, but we need you to disseminate it. And we also need you to hear from us how to help your players and your employees who are also suffering from social media to manage that, and then to come out and say it. Because one of the challenges we have with digital addiction, social media, and the child mental health care crisis is no one is talking about it because it makes us weak, right? But if a super amazing business person who has run a company from the very beginning and created a huge empire, or an athlete, or a coach, because coaches are the people that spend the most time taking away the phone, right? If they say that they had struggled with it and they recognize that it was making them feel ill and that they believe the data and the science, our chances of getting that to youth is incredibly elevated. So that is what I promise I will do. And then I'm going to have him talk about the other things we can do as well.
Well, I have to confess that within days of Stacy showing up at Boston Children's Hospital, I called her and I said, we haven't met yet, but I am putting together a convening, international convening of not just physicians, researchers, psychologists, teachers, but of folks at the tech companies at the level that they can make change. I said, I'm pulling them all together. We're going to get in a room away from everybody else, Chatham House rules, and we're going to work this problem. And fortunately, you said yes. The other keynote, by the way, was an 18-year-old patient of mine who had a friend, a dear friend, died by suicide, and who has become a mental health activist now, in part because of that, and in part because he's really good at talking to people. And I think that beyond, all the important people, quote, important, powerful people that need to talk about it, the kids need to talk about it. The kids, we need to follow them. And what I've understood from more than 30 years of treating these kids, I'm an adolescent medicine doc, so I take care of kids in that stage of life where they're perhaps most vulnerable to the demands and to the changes and to the brain changes, which are happening very rapidly for them. But what I consistently hear from them is they want to be well. They want to be healthy. They just don't know. They don't know how to do it. They don't. So what we need to do is empower them, empower parents with education, but also to let the tech companies and the entertainment companies know that their business model is not sustainable if they are harming the people who use their products, who live with their products, and that they need to establish a second bottom line of wellness, not just dollars, not just clicks, not just eyeballs, but dollars. And to that end, one of the things that we've done, I know that Phil's going to ask us to tell us, well, what are you going to do about it? One of the things that we've done is that this summer at Cannes, we announced something called the Inspired Internet Pledge. That is a pledge that we are asking companies to make, but also all of us to make in our different statuses in life, to do three things. First of all, to tune and use tech products with the goal of emotional wellness, not of making dollars, not of getting followers and likes, but of emotional wellness. And in that pursuit, to listen to those who have been harmed and act on what we hear. And they need to do that. And the third thing, and this is the hardest thing for them, is to share data on what's working toward wellness and what's not working toward wellness. And I'm pleased to say that we have something like 13 or 14 signatories, including folks like TikTok, to actively work this problem. And I'll tell you a little story of what recently happened with them, with TikTok. It was on October 7th when Hamas invaded Israel. I talked to someone in their trust and safety department. I said, you got to shut down the feed out of the Middle East. You got to shut it down because it's going to get weaponized. And within hours, they not only done that, but they had tuned their AI to the highest level for guns, bombs, injuries, screaming, etc. The one thing that you can't do with AI is hate speech. What they did for that is they created a human moderation center within 48 hours that put a Palestinian and an Israeli next to each other all the way through the room to moderate together. So that it wasn't about pushing an ideology. It was about, frankly, about the children. And our hope is that when we can harness social media and the digital ecosystem in a way that is focused on authenticity, talking to each other, not as how great we are, but how human we are, our strengths and our weaknesses. And our goal is that maybe someday, our hope is that maybe someday, there will be a kid in Gaza and a kid in Israel who are on social media with each other and are told by their parents or their leaders that that's the enemy, and they're going to say no.
Well, first of all, I thank both of you for all of what you do. It's important that when we hear 1 in 4 children may not make it to adulthood, that we be wise listeners. That when you talk about those that you treat, that we need to be wise listeners to what they're telling us about social media, about addiction, about what's going on. And from that listening, that we do stand with each other and we stand with them. Yesterday I said one of our indigenous populations has a quote, no one's coming to save you. We're the ones we've been waiting for. Right? And I believe that we are the ones that we've been waiting for. The Human Change Coalition and the ability for us to come together, it is that strength in this movement, in this idea, in these coalitions, that really, with enormous sport organizations like the football community, we can affect change, right? As Margaret Mead said, only a small group of committed people can really affect change. Well, I believe we're there with that. So I do have, one final question for you, which is from this week, from all that you've heard, and Stacy, 47,000 teachers are standing with you in this regard because children and youth are our life, right? That's our vocation. That's what we do. But from all that you've heard, what is a question that stands out for you from this week?
So unfair. So the thing that keeps me up is I am so motivated right now, and I feel as if we have such a grasp on directions to go. My question and my charge to everyone here, in Monday, after you've recovered from all of the things you didn't get done this week, what is it you're going to take with you that will keep you motivated to not forget this? That whatever promise you make on action, that come Monday morning when the distractions of the rest of the world are there and you are not standing on this promenade, what is the promise that you're willing to make that will keep that motivation there? And that for me is going to be, I was like, it's going to be an alarm on my phone. It's going to go off every day. But whatever it is, my request and my charge is I am going to do something. And I'm going to do a little bit every day. And I'm going to make sure not to lose that momentum.
I would say it comes down to a very practical feature, actually something that I ask all of my patients once their parents are out of the room, which is, what could your parents do better? And almost all of them, the first thing out of their mouth is, pay more attention to me. Put their phones down. Turn off the laptop. Don't keep working. Don't tell me that your boss's email is more important to you than to me while you're wagging a finger at me for playing Grand Theft Auto. So I think we've got to start from the basics, which is looking at each other, not on the screen, listening actively to each other and acting on what we are hearing, because the kids are stressed. The kids are worried, and this is contributing to their stress, while at the same time they think it's helping them. What has happened is that their phones and social media have been walls between them, not bridges. We have given away our chance for deep, sustained, meaningful connectedness for near infinite connectivity. That's backwards. Let's stop doing it.
So on behalf of the Human Change Coalition, and I will,
We're done.
and I will say we are paying attention. We are paying attention. So if we have questions, do we have time for some questions?
5 minutes.
5 minutes for questions. Okay. If you guys want to go see, we'll just whoever has questions from any of our panelists. If you would like, given that we have a very rare opportunity, if I could have, I'm going to pass that back for itself. Yeah. If you don't mind, if you do have a question, if you could just introduce yourself to the group, and then whoever the question is directed at, or whoever from our distinguished panelists thinks that they might want to answer it, if you could come up, but we'll hear the questions there first. So just introduce yourself, and then we'll take your question. Thank you.
Thank you. My name is Dr. Mandeep Rai. I'm the author of The Values Compass, and basically specialise in values, but I also work for the BBC and others. So my question is, firstly, are all the panelists parents? Yeah.
I believe so. Yeah, we're all parents.
Apart from
Except
Hunter.
Hunter.
It's okay.
Just
Let's be
can you not tell from the grey that we're parents?
So, we see this firsthand. I'm a parent too. We see this, you see this in any restaurant you walk into, right? People aren't talking to each other, they're on their phones. Everywhere, even walking down the street, people are on their phone rather than seeing the step that they're taking. So I agree with everything you have all said, but I also see my 11-year-old telling me that he can't go to school safely unless he has a phone. Even if I Apple tag him, it's not enough, etc., etc. And I'm sure you've all had those persuasive arguments from your children. So I would just ask one practical tip from anyone, or each of you, whatever you wish, where we could really make, not us as, that we together combined, I don't know if this is a values-based conversation you have to have with your children, or because it's your children, it's your children's friends, it's your schools, it's the whole ecosystem has to somehow shift. One practical tip of something we can actually do.
Okay, so I'm gonna, while you're thinking that, I'll get Mitch to come up maybe for this, but I will give you something that I work with thousands and thousands of parents in Canada. Actually, it's not one, it's two. Keep some very particular spaces phone free. One of them is dinner. Do not have your phone or screens on while you're trying to figure out what happened in the day and what's going on the football pitch, right? Just trying to figure out what's there. That's the first. The second is sleep quality and quantity to educational performance, to health, to nutrition is enormous. Do not have phones in the bedroom. Right? It's not an alarm.
Your phone to the bedroom?
I don't actually, because for 10 years I've been hearing from my colleagues and from researchers. And, I think it's really important that we are mindful of those two very protective spaces.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of the most basic practical tips, absolutely all phones at 9 p.m. are put away, out of everyone's reach. It's so important for sleep quality. Not only is the blue light affecting our melatonin, but also it's obviously keeping us up later than we should. And the experience of using technology is usually an emotional experience. So it's also creating more stress and anxiety before we go to sleep. Sleep deprivation or sleep disruptions are associated with changes in brain development, so brains are smaller and functioning more poorly for youth if they're not getting 8 hours of sleep a night. It's also related to schoolwork, academic performance, irritability, driving safety. So that's incredibly important. Take a family tech-free day. Let parents and kids together talk about how difficult it is. Let them commiserate with each other. Let them share coping skills. Let them talk about how important that is, and let them then process how that all felt afterwards. Find other parents who are agreeing to not give a phone, and make a pact with them to together delay for as long as they can possibly delay. It's so much easier. I can say this, my kids are 11 and 13, and we have met with several other families, and we've agreed with them. We are not doing it. You're not doing it. Whenever someone says everyone's doing it, we'll say that's not true. Also, your friends so-and-so are not getting phones. And we will create the opportunities and the vehicles. And then when we have, and talk with your kids about the relationship that they have with their phone and the relationship with their kids, with other kids. When they recognize, when kids who use their phones all the time will be the first to tell you, it makes me feel more lonely. I don't feel really connected. So we have to help kids know, if you ever have the opportunity to use these devices, platforms, really evaluate, what am I getting from it? What's not satisfying about it? And help them be monitors and decision makers for themselves rather than just blindly getting sucked in. Those are a few practical tips.
Thank you. This is why, Hunter, you won't be on a bus alone. Right? There'll be others. I did that with my son. We had some coalition of families where we said we're going to delay having that smartphone, so that it wasn't just one individual. And it was tricky for sure, but at least there's some strength in numbers. So thank you for your question. Okay. We will take a question.
I wanted to add something.
You wanted to add something?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Here we go.
I want to introduce this idea of bundling and unbundling, because if you've noticed, many functions that used to be separate from our phone are inside our phone. The time is in our phone, the weather is in our phone, music is in our phone, and alarm clock is in the phone. If you want your child to be on their phone less, you have to start unbundling. Buy them a watch, buy them an alarm clock, buy them a separate device to listen to music, get them a Kindle so they don't read on their phone. Because it's very difficult otherwise not to use your phone and not to have their phone in the bedroom if the phone is also an alarm.
Thank you.
Great.
As a pediatrician, I have to explain this often to very young kids and their parents. So to keep it simple, I do the 3 M's you can do when this child actually gets a device. And I'm not talking just about phones. I'm talking about iPads. I'm talking about laptops. I'm talking about any technology that becomes interactive. The first is the 3 M's are, the first is to model the behavior that you want to see in your child. Be the change you want to see. Because again, if you're staring at your smartphone at that all-important email and your child is playing a video game and you're saying, turn that off, it's bad for you, that's the height of hypocrisy. They're not going to hear you. The second is that when you feel that they are in need of this technology, not in want of it, but in need of it, and can take responsibility with this power tool and do it with respect for themselves and others, you mentor them. And mentorship is not just teaching them, it's also learning from them. It's hearing from them because they're going to be better at this device than you are anyway. But what you can bring in is the executive functions of impulse control and judgment, etc. And the third is to monitor them, to have access to their digital space, to parent them in the digital space. Now they will scream, I have my privacy, I don't want to lose my privacy. And the parents will scream, oh my God, I don't have the time to do that. But the reality is that if you can monitor them, they will behave differently. And so when you have these 3 M's in hand for any of these things, you gain 2 more M's. The first is mastery of the device and of the digital ecosystem. And a big part of mastery of it is using it effectively when you're using it and putting it down when you're not in need of it. And the final one, which is, I think, most important, is make memories. I defy you to remember a digital experience you had as powerfully as kicking a football or taking a walk or just being with each other. So those are the 5 M's. 3 earn you 2 more.
Thank you so much. Just before we go, I have one gracious final.
No, it's very interesting for us, for UEFA, for all the football family. We will reach all your information, all your advice. We will put in one tool and we will spread in our football community. That once again is a large platform, but we will do it together. We are ready. Thank you.
Thank you.
So safe journeys, and we look forward to seeing you at the next sessions.